I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. Long time no see, eh? We have quite a bit to discuss tonight. One of these stories in particular, I am very excited to cover because I never thought that I would ever have to cover it in 2024, but here we are. How is my lighting? Is my lighting okay? Looking all right? I'm trying different things out, you guys. I got rid of the overhead light, so I hope my lighting's okay. Anywho, so much to discuss. I do want to tell you guys something really quick. If you are looking for things to watch, because sometimes we talk about that on this show, I have seen 2 docuseries so far. One of them, Mr. McMahon, which is about Vince McMahon. That one is wild. If you were ever into wrestling, like I was, like growing up as a kid, definitely check that one out. And then also Monsters, the Menendez brothers story. I'm almost finished with that docuseries. I'll get into a little bit of that tonight when we get to the Menendez brothers case and the recently update about that, which is very shocking in my opinion. But yeah, man. So check those out. I love docuseries. I love documentaries. That is really like something that I'm really like passionate about. I just love to watch it. But let's go ahead and get into the stories tonight. First and foremost, I do want to give a couple of shout outs to people in the chat. Shout out to Jean over on X says B1 Sabby. What's up, Jean? Greetings, CBC voters says happy Thursday, Sabby Sabs. And JB, mom is okay. JB survived. Yes, my comrade JB from RBN lives in Orlando. And he was telling us earlier that their power is restored. So I'm glad that he's okay. I mean, again, I told you guys, both myself and JB, we have lived in what I call hurricane states. And you get used to it after a while, but you still never get to the point where you're not prepared because anything could happen, right? Anything could happen. Shout out to Max says, Sabby, what are your election night plans for your show? You should host a watch party here. That sounds like fun. I was planning on it, Max. You know what, Max? Me and you were like this. We're like this, Max. Yes, I was definitely planning on it. I haven't decided like if I want to invite someone on to co-host with me. I've thought about it. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe Eric. Eric may want to do that. Shout out to Jose says, greetings from Santiago de Circo, Lima, Peru. Peru is in the house. Good afternoon, Sabby. Happy Thursday. Heading into the weekend in chaotic, unstable, volatile, fragile, delicate, sensitive, crystalline Peru. I've never been to Peru, but welcome, Jose. I'm always excited to see guests abroad. Greetings, Danielle says, please talk about Jeremy. Yeah, Jeremy was kidnapped and tortured in an Israeli prison. He is a reporter from the Gray Zone. Please, I'm covering that tomorrow evening. The reason being is because when I first heard about it, I saw the tweet from Max Blumenthal, but he didn't have much details at that point in time. Recently, I have seen, it seems like Aaron Mate has updated more information, but I didn't have that information in time to prep for the show. But I will cover that story tomorrow. Jeremy Lafredo, again, a journalist with the Gray Zone, apparently is being detained in Israel. So I'll get into that tomorrow. It's crazy, insane, but yeah, it's crazy out here, folks. Thank you. BMC3 says harp, steel, iron, head. I don't know what that means, but what's up? Greetings, Tim, though. I watched the Menendez show on Netflix. It was pretty good, intense. Have a great show, Sabby. And by the way, scrolling through your IG, you can, I think you mean you and your husband are cute. Vote Jill Stein, y'all. Yeah, Instagram. So I don't post on Instagram much. Like, I can go like months and not post on there. So you're probably seeing like older stuff. I'm not a big fan of Instagram, to be honest with you. But yeah, I actually thought about getting rid of my Instagram account, but there's some people there that I'm connected to via that account. I'm not a fan of Instagram. I never have been. It's one of those things that I got talked into doing. Greetings, Kukwita. Belly of the Beast Cuba has a production from Gaza to Cuba. The story and testimony of Murid, a Palestinian student in Cuba. Interesting. That's another one I need to check out. Thank you, Lawrence. Free Palestine. Greetings, Brown Bunny. Mother coming on at a different time. Oh, so on Thursday and Fridays, I start at 8 p.m. And there's a reason for that. On Thursdays, we have the JB and Sabby show at 5. Like we start with that earlier in the day, and then I do the evening show. So that's why I start at 8. Tuesday is the only night that I start at 7. Thank you. Thon says, oh, snap. I'm going to early voting here in Massachusetts. All yes on ballot questions and hell yes on Jill Stein. What is up, Thon? Shout out to my comrade JB says, hello, everyone. Having a great day, Sabs. I have good news. I've got the power back on. We're safe and sound since Hurricane Milton. Forehead kisses to all and thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you, JB. And I'm glad that you are safe because that storm looked like it was going to be huge. Greetings, Aunt Shawnee TV. A hit dog will holler, and Jay-Z is hollering now. Funny, Jay-Z threatens Piers Morgan, but not the one Jaguar Wright who said it. Yeah, I can't wait to get into that story. It's very telling. Very telling. Shout out to Hannah says those Menendez boys killed their parents. Yes, they did. We're going to wait till you hear the new update. Wait till you hear the new update. Greetings, Anthony sends a smile. Shout out to Kinman says, love Sabby show so much. Oh, thank you. Love you too, Kinman. What's up, Mark says, Sabby. Greetings, Rich says, great to hear JB Font. Keep up the fight. Shout out to Itole says, evening all. Greetings, Fashion City Metaverse says, thank you for sharing. Shout out to Saul says, have no fear, I is here. Greetings, Professor Zinkus is in the house says, evening everyone. And shout out to Amy says, good evening all, working late. Thanks for keeping me company. Shout out to Slater says, Jill Stein for president. Thank you, Chrome says, Sabby, and the last part of my name sounds like mom. Oh, Crom. When you say Crom, peace, LOL. Greetings, the Retaliation King says, keep your eyes wide open. Yeah, we've been doing that. Shout out to Patsy says, Sabby is such a lot looking babe. Oh, thank you. And shout out to New Sheep says, bye. What's up? What is up, fam? Okay. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who's a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate you guys. And I think that I'm going to have to update this list. So I should have this updated tomorrow. But shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Let me just increase here a little bit. There you go. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 4 categories here. Ultimate, we have Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. And don't forget about those Sabbies. They're here too. Yes, they are. That is a hefty bunch. And shout out to the members, keeping it real and doing the damn thing. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. And I'll add the new patrons tomorrow. I know some of you have been asking, when is Eric coming back? Eric should be back next week. So he took a 2-week vacation in Mexico, yes. So I hope that Eric is having a great time with his family. Okie dokie. Let's go ahead and get into that thumbnail, folks. What are we talking about? Oh, smack. Oh, snap. Let's get into it. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing Kamala, Michigan poll. This is breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. There is a new poll result for Michigan. We're going to dive into that. We're also going to show you some of the things that other commentators have said about this, like Cenk Uygur, for example, is sending a strong warning alarm to Kamala Harris's campaign because of the new poll results. So we're going to get into that. And I'm also going to show you, where was Joe Biden against Donald Trump on this day when he ran for president? So I want you to see the difference there so we can make that comparison. We're also going to discuss Piers Morgan is warned by Jay-Z. What is happening there, ladies and gentlemen? You can see Jay-Z there peeking over Piers Morgan's shoulder. Piers looks a little scared. So we're going to get into that. I don't know if that's a warning sign of what is to come from certain celebrities. And I say this because there are a number of YouTube channels that cover celebrity news. So I wonder, is this going to become a more regular thing where celebrities are going to, come after these YouTube hosts or commentators that are bringing on certain people to reveal information about them? So we're going to get into that one. I was not expecting that to happen. I got to tell you that much. We're also going to discuss, and I don't know if everybody remembers this, but remember the Menendez brothers. So there is new evidence. I can't wait to get into the story. There is new evidence about the Menendez brothers case that actually could exonerate them. Now, this is happening at the same time the docuseries has been released. I can't wait to get into that discussion. And it will tell you something about just how different the times were at that point in time and how we are today. And we're also going to discuss Netanyahu threatens Lebanon. And this story right here is getting a lot of attention from that speech that Benjamin Netanyahu gave, sending that warning to the civilians in Lebanon. Very, very scary times for them. And we'll get into a bit of Ryan Grimm's confrontation about that to the State Department as well. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to dive into the Colorado ballot measures for this year. So if you live in Colorado, you'll probably be excited to hear that discussion. Why don't you go ahead and start us all right and smash that like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Thank you, guys. We are over 140,000 subscribers now, guys. So thank you all so much. Obviously couldn't do that without you. So we're keeping it moving, Shout out to Pitchforks Are Coming, says End Wars, Vote Green 2024. Pitchforks has been a member for 22 months. You've been with me for a while, Pitchfork. You've been with me for a while. And thank you, Roger. Jill Stein and Rudolph Ware is how you write in New York State. Yes, because New York State changed the rules about third parties being able to be on the ballot. So in New York, they're a write-in campaign. And so Roger is explaining to you how you would write their names in for New York State. Thank you so much for that, Roger. And thank you, Michael, says tune. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into our first story, ladies and gentlemen. Benjamin Netanyahu has delivered a stern, harsh warning to civilians in Lebanon. This is not something that he said private. This is something that was said publicly. And I want you to hear his speech first, and then we're going to get into the response from the State Department about this warning that is coming from Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't understand how this man is not thrown under the jail. Let's get in here.
This is a message to the people of Lebanon. Do you remember when your country was called the Pearl of the Middle East? I do. So what happened to Lebanon? A gang of tyrants and terrorists destroyed it. That's what happened. Lebanon was once known for its tolerance, for its beauty. Today, it's a place of chaos, a place of war. Israel withdrew from Lebanon 25 years ago, but the country that actually conquered Lebanon is not Israel, it's Iran. Iran, which finances and arms Hezbollah to serve Iran's interests at Lebanon's expense.
We're going to go ahead and pause there. I'm only 37 seconds in and he's already lying. So obviously, I think if you've been paying attention, we all should know this. But the reality is that Israel does occupy a part of Lebanon. So Ronnie Akalik explained this effortlessly during our interview, which was that The reason why you have Hezbollah is because Israel occupied a part of Lebanon. The reason why you have Hamas is because Israel occupied Gaza. So the people who are born through that occupation and they see their family members, slaughtered in front of them, those people have found a way to resist, a way to fight back. And so people need to understand also that Hezbollah in particular is a part of the political, apparatus in Lebanon. So it's not like these are just activists, like they were elected by the people. Let's continue.
Hezbollah has turned Lebanon into a stockpile of ammunition and weapons and a forward Iranian military base. Just one day after the October 7th massacre a year ago, Hezbollah joined the war against Israel. It launched an unprovoked attack on our cities and on our citizens. It has since fired over 8,000 missiles at Israel, killing civilians without distinctions, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Druze. Israel has decided to put an end to this. We've decided to do whatever is necessary to return our people safely to their homes. Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel also has a right to win, and Israel will win. We've degraded Hezbollah's capabilities. We took out thousands of terrorists, including Nasrallah himself, and Nasrallah's replacement, and the replacement of his replacement.
Let me go ahead and interrupt here. So we're at 126. I want to just make a correction. You took out thousands of civilians. So what Israel has managed and continued to do was to refer to civilians as terrorists, right? Because then that way they can say they haven't really killed any civilians. This is why when you hear them make this statement that they're all Hamas or they're all Hezbollah, they say that as an excuse so that they can kill everyone.
Today, Hezbollah is weaker than it's been for many, many years. Now you, the Lebanese people, you stand at a significant crossroads. It is your choice. You can now take back your country. You can return it to a path of peace and prosperity. If you don't, Hezbollah will continue to try to fight Israel from densely populated areas at your expense.
Did you hear that? So this is Netanyahu telling the civilians in Lebanon that if they don't stand up and fight back against Hezbollah, then they will continue to attack people in Lebanon. So he is asking the civilians, again, this is insane. He's asking the civilians to stand up and fight against the people that they elected. This is why he said at your expense. So this is a threat from Benjamin Netanyahu to the civilians in Lebanon. How is this allowed?
It doesn't care if Lebanon is dragged into a wider war. Christians, Druze, Muslims, Sunnis, and Shiites, all of you are suffering because of Hezbollah's futile war against Israel. Today I ask every mother and every father in Lebanon a simple question. Is it worth it? Because it doesn't have to be that way. I know you want a better future for your children. So I'm speaking to all of you today. There is a better way for your children, for your cities, for your villages, for your country. You deserve to restore Lebanon to its days of tranquility. You deserve a Lebanon that is different. One country, one flag, one people.
Lebanon would never have even had this statement from him where he says that you deserve a Lebanon that is different. First of all, had Israel not occupied part of Lebanon, they wouldn't even be in this situation. This is what people have to understand. So, of course, he wants to leave himself out of that. He doesn't want to mention what Israel did. Netanyahu's goal is to make it seem like Israel was just minding its own business. And then one day this radical group of people just rose up and decided to start attacking Israel. That's not how it happened. Israel decided to occupy part of Lebanon, similarly to how they decided to occupy Gaza. And don't forget about the West Bank as well. Now, pretend the occupation never happened. Do you still get a Hezbollah? No, you don't. So for him to not even mention, and again, that's his job. His job is to make it seem like Israel is the forever victim. Forever victim. And anybody who is criticizing Israel or trying to fight back against them after they've been occupied, they're the enemy. They're the people that are the problem, not the occupation. Netanyahu wants you to believe that Israel occupied Lebanon after Hezbollah because of Hezbollah. Oh, these people are dangerous, so we got to occupy part of this. No, the occupation existed first.
Don't let these terrorists destroy your future any more than they've already done. Stand up and take your country back. You have an opportunity that hasn't existed in decades. An opportunity to take care of the future of your children and grandchildren. You have an opportunity to save Lebanon before it falls into the abyss of a long war that will lead to destruction and suffering like we see in Gaza. It doesn't have to be that way. Each of you can take a step for your future, even a small step. You can make a difference. I say to you, the people of Lebanon, free your country from Hezbollah so that this war can end. Free your country from Hezbollah so that your country could prosper again, so that future generations of Lebanese and Israeli children will know neither war nor bloodshed, but will finally live together in peace.
This
is a message to the
such an occupier's message to make it seem like they're not the one that is in power, and to make it seem like all of the trouble that Lebanon has is because of Hezbollah, is because of their resistance. And you have to pay attention to the rhetoric. And I want to point out this from JB as well. I think this is important. JB says, Sabs, if this was a message for Lebanon, Netanyahu would be speaking Arabic. This is for the West. This is Bibi trying to manufacture consent of Americans. And that is a good point. You guys notice sometimes he will speak in Hebrew, and other times he will speak in English. So that tells you, like, who is he really trying to speak to? Now, Ryan Grimm did confront the State Department. A shout out to Asal Rod, because she's been killing it with this. Ryan Grimm approaches the State Department about the video that I just showed you. And it says here, Netanyahu's video to the people of Lebanon seems like blanket threat against civilian population. So let's go ahead and get into this conversation here. Of course, Matt Miller is up at the podium again. Listen to what Ryan Grimm says.
You said earlier that Israel has a right to attack Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. I wanted to ask if you had seen the Israeli Prime Minister's video that he put out in English to the people of Lebanon last night. He had a couple lines in there. He said, "You have an opportunity to save Lebanon before it falls into the abyss of a long war that will lead to destruction and suffering like we see in Gaza. I say to you, the people of Lebanon, free your country from Hezbollah so that this war can end." That seems like a blanket threat against the civilian population. Is that terrorism?
So, first of all, let me say we cannot and must not see the situation in Lebanon turn into anything like the situation in Gaza.
That statement right there from Matt Miller, when he said that we can't see Lebanon turn into the situation in Gaza, that is the State Department saying the quiet part out loud. They are acknowledging that what happened in Gaza was wrong. Now, you've never heard them say that. Every time they've been confronted about what Israel has been doing in Gaza, every time the response is either, well, we'll have to investigate that. Israel will have to investigate theirself. Or my favorite response is this one. Oh, we haven't heard about that. We don't know anything about that. As if these people don't know that social media exists. They know about it. They know about these things prior to these press conferences. Now, to that point, Matt Miller is acknowledging that what happened in Gaza was wrong. If Matt Miller acknowledges that what happened in Gaza was wrong, Matt Miller is also letting you know that the U.S. government should not be giving them the weapons. So this is very important, you guys. You got to pay attention to the things they say. And I don't know if he intended to say that or not, or if he realized what that really meant. But he's letting you know that what happened in Gaza was wrong. So if you know that what happened in Gaza was wrong, why have you continued to defend Israel every time people have mentioned the death toll and the real one, not the 41,000, because we know it's more than that based on the math of the bombs and the density of the area. Whenever people have mentioned the humanitarian aid workers that have been attacked, Israel not allowing aid to come into Gaza, food and supplies, the rhetoric that has come from the IDF that's on video, every time Matt Miller, John Kirby, and that other dude whose name I can't remember, every time they would defend Israel. Now you hear them say, well, no, we cannot let what happened in Gaza happen in Lebanon. So they know it was wrong.
That would, of course, not be acceptable.
Not be acceptable. Not be acceptable, ladies and gentlemen. He said that, of course, that would not be acceptable. So you, in turn, Matt Miller, at every chance that you had, you defended what the U.S. government was doing by aiding Israel, by giving them the weapons. You are saying that it's not acceptable, but the U.S. government is still supplying the weapons. I hope everybody really takes this to heart, because they're still funding it. Just because Israel started attacking Lebanon doesn't mean they stopped attacking people in Gaza. People in Gaza are still dying. So if you know it's not acceptable and you know what Israel has done is wrong, what happened in Gaza is wrong, why are you defending the U.S. government's role? Why are you defending the U.S. government giving Israel the weapons? These people, they're masked, like these people have been so exposed.
It is as I said in response to an earlier question, it is up to the Lebanese people, not anybody else, to decide on who their government is. I said in response to another question, no country in the region should dictate to the Lebanese people who their leaders are.
So no country in the region should dictate to the Lebanese people who their leaders are. The United States, though, has done this with multiple countries. The United States has implemented regime change across the world. The United States, how many times have they decided to determine who a leader of a country should be, whether it's Haiti, whether it's Iraq? How many times have they done this? Whether it's Libya? Do you see? They are fully exposed, ladies and gentlemen. Fully exposing themselves. So my pushback would be, if I were in that room, my pushback would be, isn't that what the U.S. government does? Now, you don't always get the opportunity to do that, because I've seen him jump to other people when you try to respond back.
Not Israel, not the United States, not any of the other countries in the region, and that should continue.
But Israel is dictating
to
that.
Be the case. No, they're conducting operations going after a terrorist organization. That's a different thing than dictating what the civilian government should be. That's a question for the Lebanese people to decide.
Let me interrupt. Hezbollah is elected by the people. So Matt Miller, you know you done messed up, right? You know you done messed up. You know you got yourself in trouble here. Because Hezbollah was elected by the people. It's a political organization. So when you say that Israel should not dictate, no, they're not dictating and telling them who their leader should be. Yes, they are. I just played you the video, the speech from Netanyahu, which I know that he has seen. They're not stupid. These people know what's going on, and they're all in on it.
So,
but if they decide against Israel's wishes, Israel is threatening Gaza-like annihilation of the people of Lebanon.
Yep.
And I'm making very clear that there should be no kind of military action in Lebanon that looks anything like Gaza and leaves a result anything like Gaza.
So you know he done messed up, right? You know Matt Miller has messed up. You look really bad there, Matt. You look really bad. You guys have been exposed. Like seriously, I can't even. So good question there from Ryan Grimm, because that just really shows people what is going on. Now, Asal Rod also mentioned this, and I think this is really good for people to see too. Let me go ahead and share this. This is from Simon D. Lewis. Whether you like it or not, Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese political landscape. The Israelis are trying to change that through force, and you're supporting it. This is very different than calling for restraint. Let's get to this clip here. Also, State Department press conference.
Right, but whether you like it or not, Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese political landscape, right? So what the Israelis are doing is trying to change that landscape through force, and you're supporting that. So this seems to be a very different approach to calling for restraint, trying to get everyone on board with diplomatic agreements. In the last 2 weeks, we've gone from that to, maybe we could change the government of Lebanon through a ground invasion.
So we have always made clear that we think a terrorist organization should play no role in the government of any country. And especially.
So here we go. So first you said that it was a terrorist organization, and Simon is letting you know, but they are a part of the political landscape. So first, Matt, so you got some explaining to do, Matt Miller, because at first you didn't even want to admit that it was a political, organization. So Simon had to call you out on it. And now he comes in to say, well, we never want terrorists to be a part of a political organization. So wait a minute. Who's we? Who's we, Matt? Who are you speaking for? What do you mean by we? Because Benjamin Netanyahu, in his video, he said that to the people, you need to stand up against Hezbollah. So we know that Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want Hezbollah to be a part of that political organization. But now you're saying we. So we is more than one. So that means that the U.S. government, also doesn't want that to be a part of the political organization, which means both the U.S. government and Israel are in total agreement with what is happening. We, he said,
play no role in the government of any country, and especially a terrorist organization that has shown over decades that it is willing to use force and threaten force against the Lebanese people to accomplish its aims.
Doesn't this sound familiar? Use force and threaten their own people. Isn't this the same thing they said about Gaddafi? And the U.S. government used Gaddafi as an excuse to drone and kill all those people in Libya? That was under Barack Obama's administration. That was his excuse to. Barack Obama dropped so many damn drones. He dropped more than George W. Bush. You believe that? So do you see how this works? This is the excuse they use. They don't like the organization that's in power, so then they'll tell you that it's a terrorist organization, even though the people elected. Then they'll go on to tell you that those leaders are attacking and killing their own people, and that gives the U.S. government an excuse to go after them or to send somebody else after them, like Israel. This is an old game that they've been playing for quite some time.
Against the Lebanese people to accomplish its aims and to hold the people of Lebanon hostage. That is not a new position of the United States. That has been our position going back decades. It will always be our position that Hezbollah.
Pause. Holding the Lebanese people hostage. How are they holding the Lebanese people hostage when Israel occupies part of the land? So the country that's actually holding the Lebanese people hostage is Israel. Israel is occupying part of the land, so they're the ones that are holding people hostage. But do you see, this is how the U.S. government comes in and supports supremacy, and they do it in a sneaky way. They make you believe that the resistance organization, that they're the ones that are the problem because they're hurting their own people. So this is where they come in with we got to protect the women and the children defense. Oh, you've heard it before. Isn't that what they said about Afghanistan? How many people fell for that? How is Afghanistan today? This is how the U.S. government backs supremacy. And no, of course, they're not standing up on stage with like Klan hoods or anything like that. They do it in a more sneakier way. So they're totally okay with Israel occupying people and land in Lebanon, but they're not okay with people in Lebanon trying to resist against the occupation. Then they turn around and they tell you that Hezbollah is the one who's holding the people hostage. They make the oppressed sound like the people in power.
Should not be able to, or should not be allowed to use force against the Lebanese people to accomplish political aims. That hasn't changed. It's not going to change.
And now these sort of broader aims raises a question. What you've come out in support of is limited, I guess, short-term incursions. You won't say how short-term, but how long can this operation continue with the goal of basically ridding Lebanese politics of Hezbollah?
So we are in conversation with the Israeli government about exactly those questions. The goal that Israel is trying to accomplish is to push them back, away from the border. I think it's a separate. What's that?
I mean, is that the goal? They seem to have that goal and other goals.
That is their goal. I will say it is our goal to ultimately see the Lebanese people elect their own political representatives. When it comes to Israel's military goals, I'm not going to make any forecasts. We're going to continue to have conversations with them about it.
So he says that his goal is to make sure the Lebanese people can elect their own people. So let me tell you how stupid he is, right? So Rania Khaled comes in and she says, she's quoting him, "I would say it's our goal to see Lebanese people elect their own representatives." Rania goes on to say, Lebanese people did elect their own representatives, and a large number of them elected Hezbollah and its allies. That is why they formed the largest political bloc in the country. The U.S. is trying to overthrow democracy, not install it. So does everybody understand what's happening here? So Matt Miller just lied at the State Department press conference by telling people that they want people in Lebanon to elect their own leaders. That is a lie. People in Lebanon do elect their own leaders. Rania would know, she lives in Lebanon. And this is the danger with corporate media. And this is what I've said over and over again, because for the people who do watch those press conferences, and some people do, if that is all that they're watching, it's very easy to sit back there and to watch that and believe it. If you don't know anything about the history, if you're not watching any other media, more so independent media, if you're not watching media that is not a puppet and a mouthpiece for the State Department, it is very easy to believe what Matt Miller just said. This is why independent media is so incredibly important. Now, Rania Khaled was not in that room, but imagine if Rania Khaled was in that room during that press conference. She is a Lebanese American who lives in Lebanon, and she would have been able to effectively push back on that and say, excuse me, I live in Lebanon and we do elect our own leaders. This is why corporate media is sinking. And this is why you're starting to see more people that were a part of corporate media branch out and kind of do their own thing, because the ratings just ain't there, boo. The ratings just aren't there. Haven't been since Trump in 2016. They have continued to sink and sink. And that is because people are not buying the lies anymore. So the State Department, of course, is corrupt and they're liars. And as he told you, they had no other goal. If they had no other goal, what is this? In a documentary produced by Arte, Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich says he wants a Jewish state. Now, listen to what he wants this state to look like. This is the English version, so I'll read the text along with you. He says, I want a Jewish state. Very complicated. It is a state that operates according to the value of the Jewish people. She goes on to say the sovereignty of the state of Israel starts at the sea. Is that all at this stage? Or do we want more beyond the river in the next stage? This is the part that is incredibly important. It is written that the future of Jerusalem is to expand to Damascus. Only Jerusalem until Damascus.
Bezalel Smotrich a une vision maximaliste de la terre
Smotrich has a radical vision for the promised land.
promise. Elle inclut les territoires palestiniens, mais aussi des territoires.
It includes Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. Is the Queen of Jordan going to say anything about this? Because we all know Jordan is just another puppet of the United States government. Is she going to say anything about this? It's not just Smotrich either. Yes, he's a part of Netanyahu's administration. He's not alone. He's not alone. This is what they want. So where is the Queen of Jordan? Where's her pushback for this? So when the State Department told you that that was all they wanted and there is no other goal, they are lying to you. If I've seen these videos, I'm pretty sure they've seen these videos. They are all in on it. Does everybody understand? They're all in on it. These people have been lying to you, and they've been lying to you for a long time. And that includes the Biden administration, and that includes the Trump administration. They're all in on it. They all know that Israel wants the rest of the land. And that's what this is really about.
En Jordanie, en Syrie, au Liban, en Irak, en Égypte ou encore en Arabie Saoudite.
Even in Saudi Arabia. So you see how it's spreading here? Okay. Now, Saudi Arabia, you guys have been kind of quiet. I think you're trying to be like Switzerland or whatever in this piece. You need to start speaking up. You really need to start speaking up, because the reality is this, boo. I know you guys are a part of BRICS with Russia now, but you're also supposed to be an ally with the United States or whatever. And you guys need to speak up, because the reality is there's going to come a time, if this is not stopped, there will come a time when they'll come after your land too. This is the vision. And I've told people this before. And of course, part of Egypt. So what does that tell you? When they were trying to force the Palestinians into Egypt in Gaza, and they're in the southern part of Gaza, and they're trying to push them in and put that pressure on Egypt, open up your borders and take them so we can take over the land in Gaza, that wasn't going to matter anyway, because they still want part of Egypt.
Une vision certes radicale, mais admise dans le débat public en Israël.
Yes, an extremist vision. And that is the government that is in power. So they have been very open about what they want. It's not like they're hiding it. FM says, facts, Sabby. That's why I don't know why Egypt is not concerned. I don't know why either. Egypt is also a puppet of the U.S., another one. But they've been very, very vocal about what they want. And now Netanyahu is threatening the civilians in Lebanon. Such a mess. Such a mess. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Conrad. Hey, Sabby, keep up the good work in the gym. Thanks, Conrad. What's up? Thank you, New York Varsity. Wait, is Jeremy from the Gray Zone free yet? No, I'm going to discuss that tomorrow. I got some more information about that before I went live, but he is not free yet. So I'll get into that tomorrow. Thank you, Edward. We can't let Kamala or Trump win. # Stein 2024. I agree with you. This is going to continue. Thank you, Mark. Sabby, did you see John Kerry complaining that they couldn't build consensus? Did any of these people read George Orwell? Couldn't they do what we want instead of the other way around? They could, but they're all bought and paid off. All bought and paid off. I didn't see that, but that wouldn't surprise me. Thank you, Marvin. Zionism equals ISIS. Both religious supremacists want religious states. Oded Yenin plan expansion include Egypt and part of Saudi Arabia. Crazy times, ladies and gentlemen, crazy times. All right, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button for me. Thank you. And we're going to move on to our next story. And this one is a doozy. I hope you have some popcorn for yourself. If you don't like popcorn, I don't know, a Snickers or the little sour gummies. I hope you have something that you can munch on, because this is about to get cray. This story is wild. So I never thought in 2024 that I would discuss this case. As far as I was concerned, this case was over. The brothers were sent to prison. And so I am very shocked that I am discussing it today. The Menendez brothers were found guilty of killing their parents. They went to prison. Haven't really heard about them in a long time. But now there is new evidence that has been brought to light that could exonerate the Menendez brothers. Now, what is interesting about this is that this also happens during a time that a Netflix documentary has been released called Monsters, the Menendez Brothers. I am watching it. I'm almost finished with the docuseries. I haven't finished it quite yet. But I want to warn you, Eric Menendez, who is one of the brothers, has already stated that he is not happy about the docuseries. And he has said that there are a number of lies that are told throughout that series. So I just want to forewarn you about that. I don't want to get too much into it. All I would say is that if you watch it, just make sure you do fact checking afterwards. So just FYI. But now there is new evidence. One of the things that the Menendez brothers said when they were on trial is that the reason why they killed their parents was because of self-defense. Now, they argued in court that they were sexually abused by their father. And they said they had no choice but to kill their parents because of that. You have to understand the political landscape. You have to understand the time period. During that time, particularly in this country, that was not something that people were willing to talk about. It wasn't well received. The jury at that time did not believe the story about the abuse. And it's interesting because if you watch the docuseries, you're probably going to think to yourself, how in the hell did they not believe these guys, right? But you got to consider the time period. That was just not something that was really brought forward or brought to light at that point in time. Well, now, this information could change everything. An author describes how he found key evidence that could free Menendez brothers. Again, this is crazy news, ladies and gentlemen. I can't believe this is happening. We're going to read a little bit of this here, then I'm going to get to the clip. It says an author who has been working on the story of Lyle and Eric Menendez for decades have claimed that a letter he found during his investigation may be key to freeing the brothers from prison after nearly 3 decades. Robert Rand, the author of the Menendez murders, said Thursday that a letter that he found in 2018 was what Eric sent to cousin Andy Kano 9 months before the murders, complaining about the abuse from his father. Eric Menendez was 17 years old when the letter was written and sent. And that's another thing as well. Eric was underage at that point in time. His brother Lyle was legally an adult. I believe he was a college student at one point, and there's so much more that goes into that. But Eric in particular was still a minor. I found a letter in a dresser full of Andy Kano's paper in 2018 when his mother, Marta, let me go through his room. And she said, if you find anything, great. I found that letter and realized it was a major piece of new evidence. So let's go ahead and get into the clip here, because again, I had forgotten all about these guys. I'm just keeping it real, and I was very young at the time anyway, so I didn't know a lot about the situation. The narrative that was displayed about the Menendez brothers is that they were 2 rich kids from Beverly Hills who wanted to kill their parents. And there wasn't a lot of sympathy for them at that point in time. But now with this new evidence, there is a possibility that they could be exonerated. And I want to get into this clip here with Chris Cuomo. And actually, Rosie O'Donnell is a part of this as well. She's talking about how this could be a game changer for them. Let's get into this.
Counselor Guerra goes first. Help us understand what changed and what could still change.
Well, what changed was, I think, when we discovered or were able to get the declaration of Roy Rosella, who was a member of Menudo, and he declared under penalty of perjury that he too was molested by Jose in the house, in the family house. You combine that with the letter that Eric had written prior to the killings, 8 months prior, to his cousin, who's now dead, Andy Kano. And we combined that together, and we filed back in May of last year what's called a writ of habeas corpus, which is a fancy legal term, Latin term, for basically set aside this conviction. Bring me the.
So let's read this. I've been trying to avoid dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking that he might come in. He's warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle. So this is another thing that was mentioned throughout the trial, which was that his older brother Lyle was not aware of this for quite some time until he eventually did, let him know. But apparently, from what the brother said, the father started abusing Lyle first, and then Lyle eventually was like, I can't do this anymore. And then he stopped abusing Lyle, and then he started abusing Eric, his younger brother. When you watch the docuseries, one of the things that it is going to show you is that the mother apparently knew. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but they are going to show you that in the docuseries, that the mother knew what was going on all along and did nothing about it. They're also going to show you a therapy session between the mother and the father, where the mother admits that she came from an abusive household. And apparently the father also, it alleges, came from an abusive household, and that the father, what he was doing to his sons was also done to him. Now, again, I don't know how true that is, because it's a docuseries, and it's not uncommon for docuseries to exaggerate or embellish for dramatic effect. I think we all have seen this with the Aaliyah series, the Whitney Houston series. We've seen this before. We're like, wait a minute, did that really happen? So I do say, again, do your own research after you watch it.
Body under the Latin. Also, since that time that we filed the habeas corpus, the changes in California law have allowed for what's called resentencing. And George Gascon, who's the DA here in Los Angeles, has a robust resentencing unit in which they take a look at sentences that were imposed years ago that were wildly disproportionate to what they might be today. And we are running down both those parallel tracks. We've supplied to them all kinds of information, what we call mitigation information, about them, and we're hoping now, and today was kind of an amazing day from our standpoint, that even 30 days before an election, and mind you, part of the argument that I've been making for a year and a half is that these guys were convicted because of DA electoral politics some 30 years ago. Mind you, the evidence portion of their second trial, where you mentioned they were convicted, started 8 days after the acquittal of O.J. Simpson, and the DA was on his heels at that point, and they needed a conviction.
Let me just pause here. So that's another thing I want to mention, is that what else was going on at that time? The O.J. Simpson trial as well. It was a crazy time in America during that period. And something I want to point out as well, this is Lyle here on the left, and this is Eric on the right. And I want to point out something about Lyle, which I did not know until recently. Lyle apparently was wearing a hairpiece, which I just thought that was his hair, but was wearing a hairpiece because he started losing his hair when he was a teenager. And I don't mean like, we all have shedding. I don't mean like shedding. His hair was falling out in clumps when he was a teenager. Now, I'm no therapist and I'm no doctor, but if I were to make an assumption, maybe that could have something to do with the stress that was happening within the household. That's what I would assume. But I don't think it's common for a teenage boy to lose his hair in clumps like that, right? But he's wearing a hairpiece, and he's wearing it at that trial as well.
Also, Mark, remind people, what was the difference between the first and second trial?
Well, first trial, 2 juries. Those juries heard the abuse evidence. Both juries, deliberating separately, the majority found not guilty of murder. They were hung juries between murder and manslaughter. Second time around, 8 days after the O.J. acquittal, they was one jury. They largely were prevented from presenting evidence of the abuse. And then what always has galled me is the DA got up in the closing argument in front of just one jury this time and argued that it was an abuse excuse when he knew very well that he was the one who had convinced the judge to exclude the lion's share of the abuse evidence that the juries, two separate juries, had heard and hung on in the first time around.
Let me pause here for a second. One thing I want to add about the testimony. It's not like they got up on the stand and they said, my father abused me. When they took the stand, they gave vivid details about what happened to them. And that's why I think, looking back on it, it's like, wow, like the jury didn't believe them. But listening to this extra piece of information about the DA needing a win at that point in time, after not getting a win for the O.J. Simpson trial, now this is starting to make even more sense. Now, they didn't say in trial that they did not kill their parents. They said that they did. But the angle that their lawyer was going with was that they did so out of self-defense. And so now that this letter has been released, now it points to here's more evidence that shows that there was abuse that was happening. And if that is the case, where does the self-defense angle stand now? So that's what this is really about. Regardless of whether or not you believe or whatever, or how you feel about them killing their parents, what is being explored here is the fact that if the abuse, they have evidence that shows that there was abuse that was happening, does the self-defense angle now stand up? And were they found guilty just because mainly the DA did want a win? So there's a lot happening here. I told you guys the criminal justice system is crazy.
Rosie, thank you for your patience. And I know you know all this already, but the audience has got to get up to speed.
Yes.
So first of all, how was this news today met by the brothers?
Well, I called them after I spoke to Mark last night about doing this appearance, and I said, what's going on? And they said, they're hesitant to hope. After being in jail and prison for 35 years and being abused for his childhood up to that point, these men don't have a lot of bandwidth to hope for what exactly happened. And, I want to thank the millennial culture of all these kids online who said, we learned about this in government class, we learned about this in civics, and how did this happen? And they started the Free the Menendez Brothers online, and it got people interested in the documentary about Roy Rosello, the Menudo member, and how he was savagely raped.
Abused. I want to show you something. We'll come back to the clip here because this is important. It was the younger generation, or people call the TikTok generation, that decided, let's go dig into this case again because this does not make any sense. Like, how was this just dismissed, that they went through all these years of abuse? So again, people got to think back to Rosie O'Donnell's point, think back to the time period. At that point in time, this is not something that was, openly discussed out there. Like, telling someone that your parents were abusing you in that way. It was just not, I don't feel like the public was ready to accept that or to hear it. There was also the fact that they're rich. I mean, they lived in Beverly Hills. People are like, oh, these are just spoiled rich kids, etc. But I want to get to the Rosello issue, and we'll come back to the clip because we keep hearing that name. So I want to explain to you another piece that could help them with this particular case, and that is Menudo. Now, some of you may not remember this group. It was a boy group, a Puerto Rican boy group called Menudo. You may recognize one of them. Over to the right here, that is Ricky Martin. So Ricky Martin, this is how he got his start. And I remember when he was on General Hospital later on as well. But before he was Living La Vida Loca, he was a member of the boy group Menudo. The gentleman that is in question, the one that said that he was also abused by Eric and Lyle's dad, is this gentleman right here, right here. And you'll see another one I'll show you. And I point this out, and I point out Ricky Martin because it wasn't too long ago that Ricky Martin was facing sexual abuse claims himself. And so, and I don't know if Ricky innocent or not, but I know it makes you wonder, like, did something happen to Ricky Martin too? Like when he was a part of this group, it makes you wonder. And it makes you wonder if that's the case. Was that behavior repeated? I don't know. We don't know. I'm saying I don't know because I don't want Ricky coming for me like Jay-Z coming for Piers Morgan. Okay. Okay. All right. But that's the gentleman. So it says, could a Menudo member's sex abuse allegations against the Menendez brothers' dad help free the siblings? So that is him here to the left. And I just want to read this part here where it says, right here. The abuse allegations gained traction in recent years after Roy Rosello, that's who I just showed you, a former member of the iconic 1980s boy band Menudo, came forward with his own allegations that he was also assaulted by Jose, by their dad. So now you have another person who was underage at that point in time, who is saying that they were also assaulted by the dad. So everybody needs to understand, and this is information that would have been really helpful, I guess, to them at that point in time. But here we are. Let's get back to that clip.
By Jose and was bleeding, and it was a very horrifying depiction of what happened to him and what happened to him ever since. And then with the Lyle letter that came out, it was like there's so much new evidence that they must take a look at the fact that in 1989, no one was ready to believe that fathers raped their sons, but they do. Yeah, and it's scary.
Or they didn't want to. We were so different the way we were raised in terms of cultural awareness, on terms of stereotypes and what is a man and how a man's supposed to behave. It was so different that millennials can't even picture it. They don't even see it in their own parents because we're all loving them so much to make up for how we were raised. But Rosie, there's always been this suspicion that if the Menendez brothers were the Menendez sisters, do you think this would have come out differently even back then?
Well, I think that if Eric was Erica, that Lyle would be a hero today. Because
and people have to really hear this and understand this, because the reality is, especially at that point in time, is that for men, the macho attitude at that point in time is like, it's like you had to be macho, masculine, that kind of thing. And for a boy to go and tell someone that their father was doing that to them, I don't really think American culture was readily to accept that. I mean, let's just keep it real. So I agree with Rosie when she said, if Eric had been Erica, yes, I do think they would have more likely been believed. And I think also there would have been more sympathy. Now, why is this important? This still happens today. And people need to understand, like, when we talk about like different types of abuse, that includes men too. It's not just women. It's not just little girls. It's also little boys that can be abused by other men, family member, coach. You hear about it later on. Like look at a lot of the professional athletes that have come forward in the past couple of years that said they were abused by someone when they were a kid. So it happens to men too. And people need to understand that.
As a father viciously raping a child since they were 8 years old, all the way up until they were 17, and telling them they couldn't go live in a dorm because they had to stay home and service the father. If all of those facts were known to people, they would understand what happened. And
the biggest problem is, particularly with Eric. Eric was underaged at that point in time. He was still underaged. And I think that's the part, because the biggest question that people ask is, well, why didn't they just leave? So again, Eric was a kid, was still underage. Lyle was not. One of the arguments that Lyle gave over and over again is that he said, we thought about that. We thought about running away, but he would always find us. They always had a way. Their father was a big time executive. I think he had signed Menudo. If I remember correctly, he got Menudo signed. So this is someone who was very well known, had a lot of money. They were living in Beverly Hills. So I guess that there was that too. And then I go back to the trial, and one of the things that bothered me was the line of questioning to ask someone whether or not they wanted that to happen to them when they were between the ages of 6 and 8 years old. They were a child. Children cannot consent. So I think about some of the questions that were presented to them in the courtroom, and I'm like, there's no way you would ask this today. You would not ask this. A child? So what do you mean? Did they want that? They were a child. They don't know what they want. And it's mind-boggling to me when I think back to that trial today, and I'm like, there's no way that line of questioning would be acceptable today.
Sadly, I think, Chris, that unless you have experienced this kind of tortured existence of an incestuous family and all the lies that cover one another, unless you experience that, it's very hard to believe. Why didn't they just walk away? Well, they were 17 and 21. They were kids. Right. They were children who had been abused the vast majority of their childhood in horrific ways, where push pins were in their penis. Like, it wasn't a casual father that came in drunk, and this was a sophisticated pedophile who was doing abusive terror to these children. How?
And I don't want to get too deep into, because Rosie gets a little graphic there. I want to jump ahead. They do talk about some of that in the docuseries, but these kids, like, honestly, and what people have to understand is, like, when that happens to children, like, children don't get over being sexually abused. Like, even when you become an adult, like, that's something that stays with you. And I look back and, like, for the mother to just sit, like, what let's finish.
This series, before any of this happened, I interviewed Lyle Menendez, and this was absolutely where they were, where his head was at that time. Here it is for the audience, just to show that this is not new.
What do you remember being told by your mother, by your father, their actions that made you feel that your life may be in danger?
Well, my father was telling me that a couple days before that I had made my decision in terms of deciding with Eric and wanting to threaten to expose him, and he was now forced to make his own decisions about what to do about that. And I asked him if that's a threat, and he said, you take it for what it is. I know my father. I know what that means. He's basically suggesting that he isn't going to go through a child molestation trial. He would rather go through a murder trial than a child molestation trial.
Now, again,
the point is,
so he said his father said he would rather go through a murder trial than a, sexual abuse trial. That's what he said his father said.
I may look like my own son even from 7 years ago, but Lyle Menendez has been consistent in what he says happened all throughout. And Rosie, how does this impact you?
I was a kid who grew up in a similar situation, not as terrifying or horrific, but definitely generational abuse and alcoholism in an Irish Catholic family. And there have been, many people who have suffered as a result, including, siblings and cousins. And so when I initially read the story, I was very drawn to it. And then I got a letter when my TV show was on in the 90s from Lyle. And he said, I've heard you speak positively about us, and I hope this is not the reason that I think it is, that you can relate to the. And I, at that time, was in no way interested in exploring that subject in my own family and my own life. But through knowing Lyle and through being older and understanding your desire to help is bigger than your fear of being ostracized, and you do help, and it actually heals you. And so this has been very healing for me. And I've been in touch with the boys for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I feel as though I know them very intimately. And if you thought that they were creative, horrible, gangsterish kind of guys, why have they had no charges in 34 years against them in the prison system? Why are they one of the most lauded prisoners in the California system? They are not the men that were described in the Ryan Murphy monsters. They are not that. That was inaccurate, wildly inaccurate, and I feel unjust in many ways. And so I'm so glad that this is happening now, right after that. I called them when that show aired, and I said, I encourage you to not watch it.
Yeah, and I'll let it in there, but I was going to tell you guys again, like I said, I'm almost done with the docuseries, and even I have some questions, and I honestly said that, like, look, some of these things I have to look into myself because I don't believe everything that's being shown through this docuseries. So you just gotta, again, take it with a grain of salt. But it's crazy. It's crazy when you think about this now, all because of this letter. And it just really makes you wonder, like, again, what would have happened if they did have that evidence at that point in time, if they did believe them, at that point in time. And we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see if this does exonerate them. But Kim Kardashian also, I don't know if you guys know this, she also went to go visit the Menendez brothers. She's been working towards, I guess, like helping free prisoners. So that's a project that she's been working on for quite some time. And what was also interesting is that the two actors that played Eric and Lyle in the docuseries also visited them in prison. So again, of course, the actors have no say in how the docuseries turns out. But like I said, Eric did issue a statement that said that he was not happy about the docuseries and that there were a number of lies. So just take that into consideration if you choose to watch it. But apparently it appears that there was some injustice that was done. And hopefully this gets worked out for them. But I can understand them not being too excited or getting their hopes up. There are a number of prisoners now they did kill their parents. There's no lie about that. They did kill their parents, but there are a number of people that have been imprisoned that didn't do the crime. And every now and then a group comes along and says, we want to help, free you and get you out. And usually it does not happen. So I can understand them not being excited. All right, let's go to some of the comments. I know, crazy story. I never thought I'd talk about this. Christine said, Kim Kardashian is all over this case. Yes, she is. Gigi said they both went on spending spree for months after they killed their parents. That was another thing, too, that was brought up that didn't make them look good. It's like you killed your parents, but now you're going shopping and you're spending all this money. Uptown Rocker says they were adults. They could have left. Well, no. Eric, as I said, was 17 years old at that time. So he was still a minor. Lyle was, but Lyle said, I guess, again, he felt like he could not leave. It's crazy. It's crazy. Thank you, KN. They were adopted too. That's why I think people didn't want to accept that. Ooh, good point. Good point there. Thank you for the super sticker, Margaret. I see the Eiffel Tower in your picture. Liz says the mother was also a victim of abuse, but we all have the responsibility to get our healing and not act it out on the next generation. 100%, Liz. That is especially important. 100%. Thank you, Roger. Okay, I always wondered why this trial made news back then was so big at the time. I didn't know Dad was connected to the music industry. Yes, sir. And keep that in mind when you hear all the things we're hearing about the music industry today, right? Thank you for the super chat, Adam. I'm a huge MAGA, but I follow you because you're likable and I like hearing other sides of arguments. Wasn't that interesting? Interesting. I'm not MAGA, but we do have quite a diverse audience. Thank you, James, who's been a member for 28 months. What's going on, James? Always grateful for your content, Sabby. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Roger. Was it millennials who got this poppin' or Gen Z? I think Rosie said it was millennials on TikTok who went after this and said, okay, let's see if we can help these guys. So, yeah. Smash the like and let's keep going. This story is gonna make you want to scream, okay? Okay. So it was just a couple of days ago. I covered the interview of Jaguar Wright on Piers Morgan. She was revealing quite a bit of information there about Sean Diddy Combs and her experience with him in the music industry. But she also revealed some information about Jay-Z and Beyonce as well. Let's take a look back at that, and then I'm going to explain to you why this is problematic now, especially for Piers Morgan. Let's get into it.
Why there's no vindication for me? Because for 4 years, I've been screaming, not just Diddy, but Diddy and Jay-Z are monsters. And the victim-making machine kept going on.
Jay-Z has been notable by his silence since these charges were brought against Diddy. Why do you think that is?
Because that's what he does. He starts little fires everywhere, forces everyone involved to go and carry water while he sneaks away without a response. That changes now, Sean. You must respond. You have no choice. Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Robert Kelly, Sean Combs have one person in common, professionally and privately. Sean Carter. This has been a fist of tyranny that has been punching through our culture and our society for decades. It must stop.
There's been obviously a lot of
cruelty-free artistry.
Right.
So I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was a voice in the background there when she was talking about Jay-Z. Let's go back and see if we can hear that one more time. I did not notice that the first time, but let's listen for that voice in the background.
Sean, you must respond. You have no choice. Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Robert Kelly, Sean Combs have one person in common, professionally and privately. Sean Carter. This has been a fist of tyranny that has been punching through our culture and our society for decades.
There was the voice. There was a voice in the background said something like, is she talking to, I don't know who that was. Maybe that was a producer, but I'm assuming that was not supposed to get through. So that was interesting. I wonder if she was saying like, trying to say, is she talking about Jay-Z? Because she was brought onto the show to talk about Diddy and the Diddy case. So I don't know if Piers Morgan knew that she was going to bring up Jay-Z or not, but it sounded like that could have been a producer or someone in the background.
It must stop.
There's been obviously a lot of
cruelty-free artistry.
Right. There's been a lot of rumor mill about what has happened in the rap world. A lot of allegations that the misogyny in the lyrics clearly was based on a general misogyny towards women away from the music. And that
Jeff, Sean Carter is Jay-Z.
Clearly seems to have been borne out by these charges against Diddy, which if he's found guilty of all this, he's never coming out of prison. How dangerous do you think?
Thank God.
How dangerous do you think he is as a person?
I think he's one of the most dangerous people I've ever met. A lot of people have been questioning, well, she doesn't really know him. She has no knowledge of him. She doesn't have a picture with him. I'm smarter than Claudia Jordan. I would never take a picture with the devil. Everyone knew he was the devil. He's been the devil for 30 years. He's been covered and protected by not only Clive Davis, but Lucian Grange. He was selected to be the demon that he is, to keep the culture in line so the industry could continue to rape it for all of its precious jewels. We have too many lost. The list of lost is ridiculous. And everyone knows Diddy was selected for this job.
Okay, so that was just a bit of the interview that I covered, but more specifically the part there about Jay-Z and Beyonce, which again, I don't know if Piers Morgan knew that she was going to bring up Jay-Z, but apparently it was brought to my attention that Jay-Z, since that interview, Jay-Z and Beyonce had their lawyers reach out to Piers Morgan. So let's get into this story here. By the way, it's just his interview. Jaguar Wright has had multiple interviews with different YouTube hosts talking about Jay-Z and a bunch of other people. But for whatever reason, they chose to respond just to Piers Morgan. So I don't know what that's about, but let's get into it. Piers Morgan apologizes to Jay-Z and Beyonce. So there's Piers Morgan there, and it goes on to say, last week he interviewed singer Jaguar Wright about Sean Diddy Combs' recent arrest. She said on the show she had been screaming that Diddy and Jay-Z are monsters for years. Morgan said on Tuesday that he had been contacted by Jay-Z and Beyonce's lawyers who said the claims were totally false and have no basis in fact. So again, this goes back to other people have made this point as well. People have said that Jaguar Wright has a lot of information that she's, discussing on these shows, but they also add like there seems to be no evidence that she's bringing along with her, right? But that's one of the pushback things that she will get from people is they're like, you're saying all these things about these musicians, but you have no evidence. However, it wasn't until this Piers Morgan interview where it seems as though Jay-Z and Beyonce decided to go after the host for having her on to have this discussion. As I said, if you search for her on YouTube, you search Jaguar Wright and Jay-Z on YouTube, you will see there is a number of interviews that she has had where she has talked about Jay-Z as well. But they chose to, for whatever reason, go after Piers. It could be because Piers Morgan has over 1 million subscribers. I don't know. But I want you to hear what he said, because he had to come back and make a public apology. So listen to this.
The allegations leveled at Sean Diddy Combs have burst the floodgates on salacious claims about an industry many people believe harbored a monster. Understandably, the internet's ablaze with claims about these events and whether other powerful figures were involved too. Well, last week I interviewed Jaguar Wright, a singer-songwriter who's made claims about Diddy for years. Those claims had already received a lot of attention in the media across many platforms for many years. And that's the thing about platforms. The reality of the modern world is that pretty much everyone has a platform as long as they have something to say that other people want to hear. That's why we invited her on to be interviewed. The people making these claims have an audience with or without shows like mine. Well, Jaguar Wright unexpectedly made several serious allegations about Jay-Z and Beyonce during that interview. As I said in the moment, they were not present to respond or defend themselves, but now they have. Their lawyers contacted us to say that those claims were totally false and have no basis in fact, and we've therefore complied with the legal request to cut them from the original interview.
So did everybody hear that? So they had to remove that part of the conversation from that interview. So they went back and they edited, and you can go check it for yourself. I saw it. They went back and they edited that video. So now it does not include that information anymore. So, and this brings up another question. Are other celebrities going to do the same? Because again, there are a number of YouTube channels that talk about like celebrity affairs or whatever, this type of thing. And everybody has been talking about the Diddy situation. So it makes you wonder, are other musicians going to do the same and target the host of those shows? So it almost kind of sounds like he got a cease and desist if they had to go back and they had to remove that piece from the interview. Does that make, how do you feel about that? Does that make it look like Jay-Z and Beyonce look more guilty, or does it make it look like they're just trying to defend themselves and their reputation and say, no, these things aren't true, right?
Editing interviews is not something we do lightly at a show called Uncensored. But, like the proverbial cries of fire in a crowded theatre, there are legal limits on us too. And we apologise to Jay-Z and Beyonce. Well, now, Sean did.
So that being said, so they issued the apology here. And he also brought on the lawyer. And this is the lawyer I did want you guys to hear from. This lawyer here, he is the one that is representing the 100 people that have come forward, over 100 people. He's the one that made the announcement recently and said that some of them were minors when this happened. So I want you to hear a little bit from him.
To say.
Your hotline took 12,000 calls in 24 hours, including many new allegations involving minors. At the moment, there's no class action. Each case you take will be represented individually. But just the fact you've got 120 already that you're repping, and you're getting so many calls, what does that tell you about the scale of all this?
Well, you know, I know that's reported 12,000 calls in a 24-hour period. And of course, that's true. I want people to know that, you know, obviously that's not 12,000 people claiming to be victimized by Sean Combs. That's, you know, a large portion of those people calling are calling with, you know, words of support. Others were prank calls and crank calls, as you might imagine, in this kind of situation. What's most interesting to me and what's most helpful are people that call that have bits of information, bits of evidence, video, perhaps pictures. And then, of course, we're particularly interested in people that had interaction with Mr. Combs and what they say happened to them and victims. But, you know, I was trying to get my head around the fact that, you know, we're talking about thousands of people calling and hundreds of alleged victims. And how could that possibly be the case? But, you know, when you put that in context and you think about conduct that allegedly occurred over a 25-year period, in multiple different venues, parties every week, sometimes multiple times a week. And the same MO each time has been alleged. Typically, it involves some sort of illicit substance placed in someone's drink, and then that individual is coerced or taken advantage of. And that's kind of the overarching theme here. And so a lot of these calls, you know, on first glance, you say, my goodness, that's just impossible that many people would call with information or who have been victimized. But when you look at it in the context of a long period of time in a particular modus operandi, it makes a lot of sense.
I mean,
and we'll go ahead and pause it there. So again, a number of people have contacted his office. Like he said, a lot of them are not legit. So let's keep that in mind. You know, some people just trying to find a way if they can get their name out there. Just keep that in mind. But now Jaguar Wright also issued a statement about this input from Jay-Z and Beyonce. And Crimson Bear shared this here, said Jay-Z and Beyonce are coming after Jaguar Wright. Jaguar has had her foot on their necks for years. So listen to what she had to say here. And I have a question for you guys. Does this woman have any type of security or protection or anything? Because I told you guys before, I've seen her do interviews about people in the music industry for years. Like this didn't just start like with the Diddy allegations. Like she has been talking about this for years.
Unnecessary court fees and litigations because Jay-Z wants me broken, stopped, or under his control. And it ain't gonna happen, Sean. I'm never gonna be under your control. Never. You need to learn how to control your wife. And
so now she gets hit with third-degree theft charges.
Her friends and their mouths. Because you got Beyonce in the Beehive looking real fucking dumb right now. 5 million unfollowed, and that number's gonna go up with every image in one of those freak-off tapes. And God help, if anybody here, how that bitch really talks about people with her, they'll start unfollowing by the tens of hundreds. a game. And they should. Because the truth is, the only reason they were following was because of the witchcraft and the spells that were being pushed out through the media. Y'all ain't fans because y'all really love them and y'all really think they're the best. You're fans because you fell for the hype. And they are hypes. I know I can sing. I've been able to do that my whole life. And they've been trying to stop me my whole career. Because see, unlike Beyonce, I'm not willing to hurt people to get famous. See, that's the part of the story that they're not telling y'all. That the more terrible you are, the more they'll protect you.
Wild stuff, guys. Wild stuff. I don't know. I just, yeah. I didn't even know that Jay-Z was paying attention to Piers Morgan, but I'm wondering if someone probably sent them that interview and said, just FYI, your name was mentioned on Piers Morgan's show. So you might want to handle this. I don't know. But it does make you wonder, you know. But I've said this before, though. I think when you are saying those things, it's like if you don't have proof, and she said on Piers Morgan's show that she did have tapes. Okay. But people aren't seeing the evidence. It makes it a lot easier for someone like Jay-Z and Beyonce to push back and say, you're just talking, you don't have any proof, right? At least that's how it would be viewed in a court of law. And I think that when she talked about losing millions of followers, she must be talking about social media or whatever. I don't pay attention to how many followers like celebrities have or whatever, but she must be talking about social media. So I guess there's a loss of followers happening there, maybe after that interview. I don't know. Crazy times we're living in, folks. Crazy times. I couldn't believe they went after Piers Morgan. That one was, I couldn't believe she was on Piers Morgan, number one, but I was surprised they went after Piers. Oh boy. Let's get to the comments. William says, Sabs got the tea overflowing tonight. Oh, thank you, Will. Thank you, Roger. Oh yeah, Jay-Z responded. All right. That's another thing too. I'm pretty sure Piers Morgan would be open to allowing Jay-Z come onto the show and tell his side of the story. But I don't think Jay-Z wants to do that, really. I think he just wants to stay out of all of this. Cam says it would be irresponsible of her not to have a lawyer on site during this interview. That's a good point, Cam. And maybe she did. Thanks, Roger. She took a picture with Jay-Z, though. Oh, that's a good point. Roger's always on. He knows these things. Christine said Jaguar's been all over YouTube for a couple of years talking about Jay-Z and Diddy. Right. But it was when she went on to his show that they had the lawyers reach out. Thank you. Name It says Tupac warned us about Jay and Diddy. Yes, he did. JB says now Tevin Campbell is coming after Jaguar Wright as well. I saw something about that. I think he's trying to file a suit against her because his name was mentioned as well. Holistic Hottie says Piers has advertisers. He's not independent. That's a good point. Thank you. Love in the Thunder. Love, Rain, and Thunder. She's a paranoid schizophrenic. She mixes reality with her disorder. So Piers apologized for his lack of research. Interesting. Miss Kiwi says, yes, Sabby, she has security. He was on Real Life Media 2 on the blue couch. And thank you, New York Varsity. Do a poll to see if she is single. I think I'm good on that, New York Varsity. I think I'm good on polling people to ask if someone is single. I think I'm all right. We good. We good. Okay. Oh boy. Go ahead, and if you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like button, guys. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we're going on, fam, to a very interesting story about the presidential race. And holy smokes, I've been warning you that this was coming around. There is a new poll that was released about Michigan. Kamala Harris is no longer in the lead in Michigan. And I'm noticing not too many people are talking about this today. And I called it. I figured some people they're probably not going to talk about this poll because it's not good news for Kamala Harris. Yes, it's October 10th. There's still plenty of time. And this is not to say that she cannot win, but this is not looking good for her campaign. Before we look at that poll, I want to show you how things changed. 3 years ago, there was a segment by ABC ABC News called "Could Arab American Voters Swing Michigan?" 3 years ago, this was right before Biden won. I want to do a little bit of a flashback so we can see the difference that has happened. Check this out.
While some state polls have Joe Biden widening his lead over President Donald Trump, the crucial battlegrounds where the election will be fought will likely all come down to voter turnout. That includes states like Michigan, where Trump carried by just 0.25% in 2016. That's why every community of voters could be crucial, including the state's large Arab American population. So ABC's Zareen Shah set out to see what's motivating Arab American voters in Michigan with 21 days to Election Day.
Are you going to vote on November 3rd?
I'm voting on November 3rd.
Okay, thank you so much. You're pledged to vote.
Isra Daraise with the National Network of Arab American Communities is hitting the pavement, working to keep Arab Americans from falling through the cracks.
I feel that a lot of times folks think of Arabs as a foreign policy issue. They think of us as foreign in general, and we're more than that.
They're racing against the clock to convince more Arab Americans.
See how much has changed since then?
To vote, aware their community of thousands could play a critical role in next month's election in battleground Michigan. In 2016, out of nearly 5 million votes cast and counted, less than 11,000 votes swung the state to Donald Trump. But that could change this time. Recent state polls already favor Joe Biden, and Michigan is home to over 200,000 Arab Americans, according to estimates from the Arab American Institute, many of them now energized by opposition to President Trump. Across Michigan, Arab Americans are trying to get their community's voices heard. Devin Batish works for the nonpartisan Arab American Heritage Council in Michigan, working the phones to get residents in the state registered.
There are a couple different states that have major Arab American populations: New York, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, California, Florida.
He says their opinion matters not only in Michigan, but also nationwide.
States that I believe Trump carried in the 2016 election that were won only by couple tens of thousands of votes or maybe 100,000 votes, those could be partially swung because of Arab American civic participation in those states.
That participation is frequently credited with giving Bernie Sanders his primary win in Michigan over Hillary Clinton.
There was extremely high turnout for voting. There was pizza being ordered just to keep the lines active and people not to get out of them.
She's seeing the same kind of enthusiasm this time. Right?
Again, this is going back 3 years ago, Arab American voters in Michigan, and see how energized they were to come out and help Biden. Notice what they said there about Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, how they were willing to they wanted to mobilize around Bernie Sanders. So this is another thing, and I want to point this out because a lot of corporate media pundits, they still blame Jill Stein for the reason why Hillary Clinton lost in Michigan. But if you look at the Arab American voters and the numbers that they had in Michigan, the woman was telling you they mobilized around Bernie Sanders. So that right there kind of lets you know the type of candidate that they were looking for, the Arab American community was looking for, versus who Hillary Clinton was. Yeah, Jaya says they didn't know back then. Yeah, there you go.
Registering over 500 Arab Americans to vote in just the last couple weeks.
I definitely think it could make a difference. It's made a difference in 2016.
With immigrants from many countries, there is no monolith Arab American community in Michigan. But topics like inclusion and foreign policy are often big for voters like Qasim Daklala.
I think trying to get to some level of normalcy where the president doesn't want to exclude you from America, I think, is something the community is excited about.
Some Arab Americans also sense a double standard in a.
Everybody hear that? Not being excluded. And they came out heavily to support Joe Biden. And who did he exclude? Them. This just goes to show you how things have changed. As much as people are pointing fingers at Arab American voters who do not want to support this administration because of the genocide, look at how enthusiastic they were for Biden in 2020. So whose fault is that? Right? He said inclusion. They wanted to be a part of it. And the response that Joe Biden gave them was to genocide their people. See, people remember. Now I want to show you this new poll. I wanted to go back just to give you an idea of how things have changed. Because now this new Quinnipiac poll is not good for Kamala Harris. Is not good. And I don't even want to hear it. I warned people because when Kamala Harris first announced her campaign, remember she was leading in most of the swing states, and people were like, yeah, she's surging, and everybody was putting coconut emojis online and everything. And it looked like she was just coming in like a superhero. But I warned you that once the honeymoon period would wear off, things would get closer. And here we are. And now Donald Trump has pulled ahead in Michigan. And this is something, again, I noticed a lot of people ain't talk about this today, but on this show, we going there. Pennsylvania, Harris has 49, Trump has 46, other candidates 2%. So this is the Quinnipiac poll. In Michigan, and this is the big one that we're focusing on tonight, Trump has 50%, Harris has 47%, other candidates 2%. And Wisconsin, Trump has 48, Harris has 46, and other candidates 2%. So he had already pulled ahead of her in Wisconsin about a week or so ago, and I talked about that. So we are going to focus on Michigan tonight. How did this happen? Right? How is Donald Trump at 50% in Michigan and Kamala Harris is at 47% in Michigan? She was ahead of him. Could it be that Kamala's attempt to avoid or try to ignore the Muslim voters in Michigan probably has a big impact about that? In fact, I'm going to show you some of the issues that were mentioned during this poll. It shows here, let's go to the issues. The economy. And we're just going to focus on Michigan. The economy. In Michigan, 53% of the voters say Trump and 45% say Kamala Harris. You can see it's the same for Pennsylvania and Wisconsin as well, where for whatever reason with the economy, these voters that were polled prefer Donald Trump over Kamala Harris with the economy. See, it's not just Gaza. This is what I've been trying to tell people. Now, why would that be? That's because she's a part of the current administration with the high grocery prices. And we also had the high gas prices like a year or two ago. So she's still a part of this administration. And this is part of the reason why someone like Barack Obama wanted to open primary. Because the reality is, as much as Kamala Harris has been told to separate herself from Joe Biden, she has not done that. She has not done it. I showed you the clip on The View where she said basically she wouldn't do anything differently than what Joe Biden did. That would include Gaza too, by the way. So she wouldn't do anything differently. So why, you know what I mean? Like, why would people feel that you would be different? The economy, immigration. This is another one. Let me highlight here. Donald Trump is beating her on immigration. In Michigan, 43% say Trump, while 44% say Kamala Harris. Pennsylvania, you see he's ahead, and you see in Wisconsin, he's ahead also with the issue of immigration. Kamala Harris was assigned to the border. That was her task. So people ain't liking this about the immigration. Preserving democracy. The democracy one always cracks me up. And then we're going to get to abortion and I'll go back up. Preserving democracy in the United States. This is the one I think that, again, I told you I see too many people cover this poll. Because this is what is interesting. The Democratic Party are the ones that are pushing the preserving democracy phase, right? And that's because of January 6th. But then why is in Michigan, these voters that were polled prefer Donald Trump over Kamala Harris when it comes to preserving democracy? Now, it's not the same for Pennsylvania and not the same for Wisconsin. She's ahead of him in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin on that issue, but not in Michigan. And then we'll get to the abortion issue. In Michigan, 40% say blah, blah, blah. 40% say Trump, 52% say Kamala. So when it comes to this issue, she is ahead of Trump in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So this is the issue that she is doing very well with, is the abortion issue. The conflict in the Middle East, and this is what I was talking about, Michigan. In Michigan, 53% say Trump, 43% say Kamala Harris. 53% say Trump, 43% say Kamala Harris. Because she's a part of the administration that is doing the genocide. And so you go to Pennsylvania, it's closer in Pennsylvania, 40% Trump, 46% Kamala, but he's still ahead of her. In Wisconsin, 51% Trump, 44% Kamala Harris. Guys, this is not good. And now one thing that I don't do on this show in particular, I don't just show you the polls where she's doing bad. I've also showed you the polls where she was doing really well. I've shown you both of them. But I noticed today people were really quiet about Michigan. And it just, I don't know. I'm telling you, people were pretty quiet about this. And you got to ask why. Now we need to look at what happened before. Don't you just love data? I'm going to get my little data on. Get my data on. Get my data on. Michigan in 2020. We're going to go back to this day in time, and we're going to look at the election final results as well. Biden had 50.6% in Michigan, and Donald Trump had 47.8% in Michigan. Don't forget, Biden had 50.6%. Let's go ahead to October 10th in 2020. So let's be fair. We want to go to today's date, October 10th. Bam. Hope everybody can see that. Look at this graph. On October 10th, it was plus 6.7 for Biden. He had 49.4%. Donald Trump had 42.7%. So Biden had like a pretty good cushy lead over Donald Trump on October 10th in 2020. Right now, Kamala Harris has 47% and Donald Trump has 50%. Kamala has 47% and Trump has 50%. When we go back to this day in 2020, Kamala had 47, Biden had 49.4. She's trailing Joe Biden. Donald Trump had 42.7%. He now has 50%. So is it just me? Is it, I don't know, is it all in my head? Are you guys seeing the same numbers that I'm looking at? So Kamala Harris has a problem. She is behind Joe Biden in Michigan, where he was at this point in time in 2020. He was at 49.4%. She's at 47. Donald Trump is at 50% right now. He was at 42.7% this time in 2020. And I want to show you something else. Piers said, we see it, Sabby. I want to show you something else. Let's go all the way to Election Day. And I want to show you what happened here. Make it a little bit smaller so we can see. If we go to November 3rd, Biden won with that 50% and Trump won with that 45.8%. But notice what happened here. All of a sudden, Donald Trump's support just shoots up as you get closer to November 3rd. So again, I'm assuming, Biden held he held that lead for quite some time until right about here in September of that year. And then it started to slip away again. And then he had that gap. But then notice how that Trump support started to surge up. So the fact that Trump is already at the 50%, which is where Biden was when he won Michigan, what does that tell you about Kamala? How is it that Donald Trump is already at 50%? He never got to 50% in 2020, not in Michigan. Somebody tell me, let me know. How is that possible? How is that possible unless the candidate is not a strong candidate? How is that possible unless you chose a candidate that was already a part of the current administration? We did not vote for Kamala in the 2024 Democrat primary. So you see that honeymoon has changed. The honeymoon is over. And it is close. You're right, David. David said too close to call. You're right. It is close. But the question that I'm asking is, how is it that Donald Trump was all the way down here in 2020, 45.8%, and now he's at 50% in Michigan? How does that happen? That only happens if the current presidency is not meeting the needs of the people and there is anger. Michigan is not just about the Muslim voters there. That's part of it. But there is also unrest with those that work in the automotive industry because they not too keen on the whole electric vehicle thing because that can affect their jobs. So you tell me how he was able to bounce, not even just bounce back, but he's shot up to 50% compared to where he was before. Is that Jill Stein's fault too? If I remember correctly, didn't the Green Party run Howie Hawkins in 2020? So there was still a Green Party candidate in Michigan, as well as a Libertarian candidate. I think it's always good to go back and look at what happened before. And I've been following it. I'm trying to tell you guys, Michigan don't look good for her at all. And what kills me is like the little bit that she could have done was allowing a Palestinian American speak on the stage at the Democratic National Convention. Wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. Little bit that she could have done. Wouldn't do it. That was the bare minimum. And then it was in the war, the ceasefire, and stop sending the arms to Israel. Really? They're saying, stop killing my people. Stop killing my people. Because look at this. Dylan on X says, support for Jill Stein and the Green Party is surging. Americans are using their red line against genocide to vote green in November. And see, this is why people are mad at us. This is why people are mad with me. I see people attacking Bree, people attacking all of us that are not willing to support Kamala Harris. Because the reality is, look at this. 40%, again, Muslim voters in Michigan, 40% Jill Stein. And then somehow, for whatever reason, 18% for Donald Trump. Is that Jill Stein's fault too? Is that Jill Stein's fault? How is Donald Trump ahead of Kamala Harris with the Muslim vote? So she's at 12% with Muslim voters in Michigan. And that is because it is her administration that's killing the people. And when I told you that genocide is a red line, I meant genocide is a red line. It don't mean, and I think some people thought that Kamala would be different about this issue than Joe Biden. I warned you she wouldn't. And people said I was being pessimistic. People are like, oh, you're a nihilist. You're being pessimistic. I was right about Kamala Harris. I know who this woman is. I was right about her in 2019. I was right about her in 2020. And I'm right about her today. If you follow her career, you would have known who she was. So these people are asking, they are saying, stop killing my people. Stop genociding my people. And your response is, I will always make sure that Israel has a right to defend itself. And why is Israel always first? And you mentioned the Palestinian people at the end, always at the end. This government supports supremacy. Don't get it twisted. Don't think just because they give you little pandering things like a Juneteenth holiday to make you feel good, even though many of us celebrated that anyway before they made it a federal holiday. They'll give you a Juneteenth holiday. They'll kneel in kente cloth. Crazy stuff. But they would implement any real police reform that would stop these cops from killing unarmed Black people. Now you see with the Muslim voters that they're having issue. What did they ask? Stop killing my people. And for some reason, some of you think that is a terrible demand. And I will not sit here and let anybody tell me that you better go with Kamala because Trump is going to be so much worse. My response is you never reward genocide, period. The majority of Americans in this country don't even vote. And there's a reason for that. Because they know this system sucks. They know this government ain't shit. But you have some people that are so focused on, oh, let me see what platforms I can get onto. Let me see what shows I can get onto. So let me continue to kiss up to the Democratic Party and kiss up to Kamala Harris. So maybe she'll come onto my show and then I can be on that level too. I haven't been in this space for 5 years yet, but I'm going to let you know something. A lot of the people are opportunists. A lot of the people just want the money and they want the access. A lot of the people don't really stick on the issues. And you saw that the moment when it came to the genocide and they spoke out against it and said, no, we can't support Biden. Kamala gets in and Kamala Harris, you find out she's saying the same thing and treating the same way. And then they're not angry because of what she's saying. They're angry because she's not lying good. And they're yelling at activists and Muslim voters for not wanting to support the same people who were killing their people. Now, I really wonder, where would some of these people have been during the civil rights movement? Well, this is the system that we have. That's the law today. That's just how it is. So you got to sit in the back of the bus. And so you see them on Twitter shaming activists and going after activists, which is a really bad take. Going after activists and going after Muslim voters instead of going after Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the Democratic Party for killing these damn people. Now, why would they do that? Because they want to be in the club. Because they want to be able to have those people on their show. Because they want to be able to have Democrat politicians and they want to be a part of that game. And some of them, too, got people that already work in the Democratic Party. They won't tell you that. They showed you who they really were. And for me, I would never, ever say, oh, okay, I know they did genocide, but I'm going to go ahead and support them anyway because I don't want to get Donald Trump. It's an absolute mess. I would never say that. I would never say that. So many people jumped on board. Let's talk about Israel. Let's talk about Gaza. It was popular. It was trending at that point in time. And the moment Joe Biden dropped out and Kamala Harris was pushed in that spot, even though she was saying the same things about this that Joe Biden was, all of a sudden is, I'm going all in on Kamala. Yeah, let's do this. Let me ride that next grift on YouTube. So you have to understand, a lot of these people that are trying to shame you for not wanting to support the genocidal party and the genocidal politicians, I know a lot of these people. I've met a lot of them offline. And I'm here to tell you, half of these people ain't shit. And they know it. But going after activists is not going to help Kamala Harris, bud. Going after people who want to support the third party candidate is not going to help Kamala Harris. We're not going to change our mind tomorrow because your butt hurt because you want Kamala to win so that you can get access and you can continue to grow your show. I'm keeping it 100. You know it's bad when you even have Cenk Uygur, who supports Kamala, supports the Democratic Party. Even Cenk Uygur is calling this out, She is not doing well. Listen to this.
We think of the 7 battleground states. Which one is Harris in danger of losing? I would say Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. Well, that's almost all of them. And he finishes by saying, I'm not saying she'll lose all 6, but she is in danger. I want you to take note of the fact that it's in the last 48 hours that this has happened. Now, that's why I told you about me saying it over the weekend. Because, guys, there are certain things you do that make a difference, especially in an election this tight. Running towards populism and trying to serve the average American works. Running towards big business and Dick Cheney does not work. It's a bad strategy. Hiding from the press does not work. Saying that you're the same as Biden does not work. Saying Trump's a bad guy. Brother, I mean, we've been doing this for over 10 years. Nobody says Trump's a bad guy more than I do. We got a whole TrumpBrackets.com about all the terrible things that he did. You're not going to outdo me on how terrible you think Trump is. But that's not the point right now. The point is, how do you win this election? And it's not rocket science. You offer the average American things that they need and things that they want. You should be their representative. You should be their fighter. You should be out there fighting for them. And right now, they're not seeing it. So when I saw that they weren't doing the fundamentals right, I said, uh-oh, now she's going to lose the lead. And she has. So I wish to God I wasn't right. Sometimes I feel like Bruno, you know? And you know how if you never saw...
Pause this for a second. So something I want to add here again, one of the few that called it out today. So even he sees what is happening because the reality is, again, like I said, like he supports Kamala, he supports the Democratic Party. But the reality is, as I was trying to warn people, that honeymoon period, eventually it wears off. It happened with Bernie too. Like Bernie had a big hype and then it kind of wore off. And then he had the heart attack. And then after that, like he actually started to grow and surge again. But it does happen. It can happen with any candidate. But the reality is, I have been saying for months that Michigan is an issue. And it just, you know, if you notice corporate media now, they're focusing more on the national poll because that's where she's ahead. So CNN and MSNBC, they're showing you, whoa, she's far ahead of Trump in the national poll. But that's not what wins the election. The Electoral College wins the election. And hey, if you don't like the Electoral College, I am not your enemy. I've complained about the Electoral College for years. But the reality is, you don't win based on the popular vote. You win based on the Electoral College. And now I notice they're not focusing so much on the swing states anymore because she's not ahead in them. Now they're focusing on the national poll because that's where she's ahead. That is manufacturing consent. And I've watched a number of corporate media pundits do this. They're only focusing on the areas where she's ahead, and they're trying to dismiss the areas where she's not ahead. They don't want to tell you that Trump just pulled ahead in Michigan, which I warned you would happen. Let's continue.
That, you know, Disney movie, I think it was a Disney movie. Anyway, it's a animated movie. It's beautiful. It's Madrigal and Encanto is the name of the movie. Anyways, all the kids know we don't talk about Bruno. No. And it's a guy whose magic power is to be able to tell the future. But people hate him for it because he winds up being right. And then they think, oh, did he cause it? And I feel like I'm in that movie. And the establishment keeps saying we caused it when we tell them ahead of time, watch out. Iceberg straight ahead. Obviously, we said that in a giant way about Joe Biden, and they didn't listen for a long time. Now they realize it. But by the way, later they'll pretend that Biden was the right candidate. Anyways, but the point is that I wish I was wrong about it, but you could see these trends. We're not wrong. There's a reason why Bernie had a 12-point lead on Donald Trump on election day in 2016. It's not because we're biased towards our side. It's because economic populism works. Hey, I'll tell you when I don't think these days progressive social issues are a winning strategy. So we're super honest about it. I don't know what more we can do to convince them, but let me give you more information. So now this is a CNN reporter, Priscilla Alvarez, talking to Dana Bash on air. And she says, what's also creeping in now is that anxiety. The reason for that is because these polls are not really moving despite multiple battleground blitzes, despite the opportunities she has had across media outlets. Now, let me pause there to clarify. The polls are moving a little bit towards Trump, and a little bit takes it from a small lead she had to a small lead he has. And that makes a giant difference. They're saying it's not moving in the positive direction for Kamala Harris. That's why the Democrats are the ones that have the anxiety, as she's explaining here. She says, quote, there's still not a lot of movement from voters who are moving more towards her versus former President Donald Trump.
And honestly, he mentioned the interviews, and I feel like the interviews are actually not helping her. Typically when you're doing more interviews, that's going to help your campaign, right? That's going to give you more eyeballs. But it doesn't seem to be helping her. And she's done a number of interviews and she's gone on a number of podcasts, and it just doesn't seem, again, one of the worst things I think Kamala Harris did, aside from the Israel-Gaza issue, is that she never found that way to distinguish herself from Joe Biden. And when she went onto The View, and she stated that she wouldn't do anything differently than what Joe Biden did the last 4 years. That's terrible. And when you tell people, oh, I think I will have a Republican in my cabinet, which we can argue whether or not Joe Biden does, but I thought he did have a Republican in there. But again, it's like, you're not offering anything different. The reason why Bernie Sanders was able to poll the way that he does and he had so much energy is because he represented change. He was bringing forth like the economics to the people, calling out the billionaires. Again, he represented change. Kamala Harris had the opportunity to be a change candidate, and she totally blew it. She doesn't want to be a change candidate. She's playing it slow, and she's trying to be like status quo and do what's more palatable so that she can win over some of the moderate Republicans. When people are dealing with economic issues in this country, you got a homelessness rate that's increased over 25% the past couple of years. More people getting evicted, the grocery prices, which she acknowledges herself. So you had to be a change candidate. It is October 10th. I doubt she's going to move over to change because she's touting Goldman Sachs. She's hanging out with Liz Cheney, a freaking neocon, which I think you can imagine she would probably put Liz Cheney in her cabinet. So there you go with the wars. So you know how that's going to go. That's why Bernie was so popular, because he represented change. Even Barack Obama got this right. He didn't do it once he got into office, but he got it right when he was running. Now, this is not to say that Kamala can't win. She could still win. She could still, in some way, shape, or form, pull this out and win. We won't know until Election Day. But it is going to be very hard for her to win without Michigan. And that's not the fault of Jill Stein. That's not our fault. That is her fault.
In fact, I had one source describe it to me this way, quote, people are nervous. They know the polls are tight. A lot of us are having these flashbacks of 2016 too. We know when it can go the wrong way, and it can still feel fresh. So now a lot of people are talking about 2016, and it's not just guys like me who are warning, watch out, okay? It's even the establishment types are beginning to see those polls, and they're getting super nervous. So I'm going to give you those in 1 second here, but one more piece of data, and that is about the markets. So you can say, hey, you know, the markets isn't polling and I don't believe the markets. You can say anything you like, okay? But the reality is people are putting their money behind this. So it's not like just knuckleheads going, what's the big deal? No, they're putting their money where their mouth is. And it's not end all be all, but it is a factor. And by the way, you know what Polymarket was super right about? That's the market that I use. That's one of our sponsors. But I look at it all the time because
it's one of their sponsors. Get that? I don't really look at Polymarket because it's betting odds, and I don't do the betting or whatever. But some people look at Polymarket and they look at it as a poll. It's not poll, it's betting odds. So just keep that in mind if you do look at Polymarket.
It's been right on a lot of things. And the thing that it was most right about was Tim Walz. And I didn't think that she had any chance of picking him. And when I see something, predict something better than I do, I go, whoa. Yeah, and that might be a little bit of my arrogance to say the least, but I'm just being honest with you guys. And so, and markets can often tell you where the crowd is going, and they might know something you don't know, or they have a sense of it. Remember, everybody's in their bubble, and this gives you the whole national bubble. So anyway, I'm on polymarket.com. Now, Kamala Harris had taken a small lead, and I was like 51-49, or I was like, I don't think so. I think Kamala had a bigger lead back then when I was talking about it 2 weeks ago. And even a week ago, I thought, right around now, Wednesday-ish of last week, I thought she's got a lead, and I thought there was some chance she could expand it, but then she's done everything wrong since then. And now it's 53-46. That's not that close for Trump, obviously. So that's a 7-point lead for Trump. So now the markets are feeling like, he's taking the lead. So now let's get to the numbers. This is Michigan, where 2 weeks ago, and even a week ago, she had a lead, and 2 weeks ago, almost started to feel comfortable. Like, look at this, 925. So that's right around 2 weeks ago. She was up by 3 points in two different polls in Bloomberg and Cook Political Report. Very credible polls in Michigan. And that's when I started to go, okay, looks like she took the lead.
But if you would have been listening to what Butch Ware said about those internal polls, you would have seen that wasn't the case. And that's the thing. Butch Ware did try to warn people about the internal polls.
Here we go. And maybe she could add to it. Maybe it'll fluctuate back and forth. I don't know what's going to happen in that regard. But then, boom, now last set of polls coming in, Trafalgar, Trump +2, MIRS, MI News Source, Trump +1, Quinnipiac, very credible, very legitimate, +4 for Trump. Oof.
And that's the one that I just showed you was the Quinnipiac poll. I don't show the Trafalgar poll because that leans more towards Republican Party. I am trying to be fair with the polls here, but Quinnipiac tends to be pretty credible. So that's why I showed you that one tonight. But it's just a reality, folks. And even Nate Robinson, who is a Democrat, supports the Democratic Party, and I thought was supporting Kamala Harris at one point. He said, if Harris loses Michigan, she will have no one to blame but herself. Although I'm sure many Democrats will learn nothing and blame voters as they did in 2016. Yeah, so that's coming from Nathan Robinson. So I think that's saying a lot. Like, holy crap, I don't expect him to say that type of thing. But it's happening, folks. And I told you that it was coming. I told you that honeymoon was going to go away. I warned you about the support. Muslim voters, majority in Michigan, are supporting Jill Stein. And if you're new to the show, you'll know I will be voting for Jill Stein. And I don't live in Michigan, but I will be voting for Jill Stein. And I think, again, for people wondering what is the goal there? Well, the goal is to try to get Jill Stein to the 5%. So that way she can, again, grow, the Green Party, et cetera. Which is needed. They need the resources. They need the funding. But the reality is, considering it's 20 plus days to the election, that's not looking good for Kamala. It's like you're almost better off being behind in the beginning and coming, rising later on, closer to the election, than starting out high and then sinking. All right, let's go to some of the comments here, guys. Thank you. Brenda Holiday said, I am proudly voting for Jill Stein here in Mass. Me too. Woohoo. Woo-hoo-hoo. Thank you, Susanna. FEMA sent electric chainsaws to North Carolina. They were not allowed to send desperately needed gasoline-powered chainsaws, ... climate change. Interesting. Thank you, Mike. Maybe Jaguar will blow the whistle on Kamala having me locked in her grandmammy's bathroom cleaning collard greens, and help will finally come for me. Oh my God. Oh boy. Human Rights for All says Palestine. U0026 Lebanon is the downfall for the Democrats. Yeah, Lebanon too. Thank you, Cloudness, who's been a member for 5 months. Jaguar Wright sang for Jay-Z at his Unplugged set on MTV Unplugged. I remember that show. She had a promising career, but loose lips sink ships. B1 fam, salute Sabby. Thank you, Kinman. Kamala puts joy in genocide. Thank you, Shane. Sabs, she couldn't allow anyone on stage to speak for Palestine because she's not in control of that. She's got as much power as Joe does right now. That's not what the speakers of the uncommitted campaign said. They spoke directly to her campaign and they said, no, we're not going to allow you to. That was her decision. So no. Thank you, Bruno. Harris' job is the border vote. Jill Stein best for us. Oh, Harris' job is the border. Vote Jill Stein best for us. Thank you. The Oracle says, but here's the real truth. The funders of the Democratic Party would just as soon see Trump win before they support candidates or policies that respond to the needs of the masses. Exactly. And you know what? It would be great for corporate media too, because corporate media, their ratings were high when Trump won. So that's the other thing I'm saying too. I think they could secretly want him to win to help their ratings, if that makes sense, because they're in the toilet. I'm not joking. I'm gonna show you those numbers one day in the toilet. All right, guys, smash that like button if you haven't had a chance to do so. Thank you so much. Yeah. And now we are getting to Colorado. Colorado, we're going to cover a couple of the ballot measures in Colorado tonight, and then we'll finish the rest tomorrow night because they have 14. Colorado is a direct initiative ballot state. Now, what does that mean? That means that they can collect the signatures through the petition process, and those measures go directly on the ballot. Tougher in a state like mine in Massachusetts, where you have to collect the signatures, have through the petition drive, and it has to be approved by the legislature, and then the legislator decides what goes on the ballot. So a state like Colorado, this is why they have 14 questions. They have 14 measures, right, that are going to be on the ballot. And my state only has 5. So if you live in California, this is your way to get some things passed. In Colorado, each proposed measure must address only one subject. Unlike other states, Colorado's single subject rule is closely tied to a measure's ballot title. So that's important as well, guys. You can't have 2 subjects, and it has to be tied to the title. And we'll get into that, and you'll see what we're talking about here. So let's go ahead and go forward here. We can always come back to that part at the end, but I want to get to the ballot measures. Okay. Colorado Amendment 79, Right to Abortion and Health Insurance Coverage Initiative. This is a big one. A yes vote supports creating a right to abortion in the state constitution and allowing the use of public funds for abortion. The initiative would repeal Section 50 of Article 5 of the Colorado Constitution, adopted in 1984, which prohibited the use of public funds for abortion. So listen to this, guys. Supermajority requirement. A 55% supermajority vote is required for the approval of this initiative. So that is important. That's a big one, folks, for Colorado. Right to Abortion and Health Insurance Coverage Initiative. Let's go on to see who supports this. All right. As we can see, Democrat politicians support it, such as Michael Bennett. Michael Bennett always reminds me of Mr. Mackey on South Park. Okay. John Hickenlooper, to name a few. You guys are familiar with those two, I think, out of all of them. But primarily the Democratic Party. The ACLU of Colorado supports this, Catholics for Choice, to name a few. And here's one of the arguments. People enrolled in state health insurance plans, teachers, firefighters, and other state employees should have access to abortion coverage. Coloradans should have the freedom to decide for themselves whether to have an abortion without interference by politicians. So this is a big one in Colorado. And one of the organizations that is opposing this is March for Life and Priests for Life. One of the arguments is the only provision keeping Colorado from being the #1 destination for unrestricted abortion in the U.S. is the 1984 Colorado constitutional prohibition against the use of public funding for abortion. This is what the 2024 number 89 Right to Abortion Initiative is about, codifying a right to abortion in the Constitution and removing the prohibition against taxpayer dollars subsidizing abortion. Coloradans must say no to abortion on April 12th and at the ballot and spread the truth about life. Yeah, I have a feeling this is going to pass in Colorado. I mean, we've seen this happen in red states since Roe has been overturned. We've seen it pass in red states. And Colorado is like a light blue. So I predict this will probably pass. There has been over $1 million, where are we at over here? Total over $7.9 million spent to support this measure and over $140,000 spent to oppose it. So it's probably going to pass. I could see the majority probably supporting that, but that's a big one. Here's a note here from Roger. He said, something doesn't seem right about it. All these organizations are on board to have public funds finance health insurance to pay for abortions, yet they're not on board for just replacing health insurance with single payer health care. That's true. And that's another one where I don't understand that. I really don't. Like, that's a good point there from Roger. Colorado Amendment 80, Constitutional Right to School Choice Initiative. This is interesting. A yes vote supports providing in the state constitution that each K through 12 child has the right to school choice, providing that all children have the right to equal opportunity to access a quality education, and that parents have the right to direct the education of their children, and defining school choice to include neighborhood schools, charter schools, private schools, home schools, open enrollment schools, and future innovations in education. This one is going to be an interesting one to see how this goes in Colorado, the school choice. And it goes on to say who supports this. House Minority Leader Rose Pugliese, who's Republican, organizations Advance Colorado Institute, and also Michael Fields, who's also Republican president of Advance Colorado and sponsor of the initiative. Here's one of the arguments. The initiative would provide essential protection against ongoing attacks on this fundamental principle and is a vital step in securing the ability of parents to make the best educational decision for their children, regardless of a future political pressures. Who opposes this is the Colorado Education Association, of course. They're using the innocuous word of choice as a vehicle for what opens the door clearly for a voucher scheme. And this is exactly what I was going to bring up. This is why you got to be careful about this. There is no other reason to include private schools in the initiative unless that is their ultimate intent. And I want to add something to that. Yeah, the school vouchers have turned out to be a disaster. What has happened is that those students who get those vouchers and choose to use it at a private school oftentimes do not do better at those schools and don't last at those schools. They're more likely to be there for a short-term period of time and then to return back. So the school vouchers have shown, the data shows on that is not working out. So you always got to be careful how they kind of snuck that in there with the private schools. So, yeah. There is no money spent to support this measure and $175,000 spent to oppose it. So we'll have to wait and see if that passes. I just hope people read the fine line. Again, a note there from Roger, who helps me with the ballot measures, where he's saying that The opposition says this will make room for the voucher system, but at the same time, it would also allow you to put your child in a school district where you don't pay property taxes. And yeah, but the school voucher, the studies show that the school vouchers with those kids taking it and using it at a private school, the studies show that it actually does not advance their academic success. And oftentimes those kids get to those schools and they do not perform well. So that's what the data shows us. Colorado Amendment G, property tax exemption for veterans with individual unemployability status amendment. A yes vote would have supported expanding the property tax exemption for veterans with a disability to include veterans with individual unemployability status as determined by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. So currently, veterans in Colorado who are rated as 100% permanently disabled, they qualify for that property tax exemption. 50% of the first 200,000 of the property's actual value from the property taxes. So it looks like they're trying to add veterans that are unemployed to be able to have this opportunity as well. So let's see who supports this. Democrats, Rhonda Fields and Robert Marshall. And there's no opposition to this. And I'll say this, I don't think you guys know how I feel about property taxes. I just don't think this is something that people should have to pay. And that's how I feel about that. I don't think you should have to pay property tax, especially after you've already paid off your house. It's just like when you pay off your car, like you still have to pay for the excise taxes. I never understood that. I'm like, but the car has paid off. What do I still have to pay taxes on it for? So this will be cool with me. I don't think it should just be veterans, but I just don't think people should have to pay property taxes, particularly after they've already paid off their house. No money spent to support or oppose it. And Roger agrees this vote is a layup for yes. Colorado Amendment H, Independent Judicial Discipline Adjudicative Board Amendment. Let's get into this. A yes vote supports creating an independent judicial discipline adjudicative board and creates rules for the judicial discipline process. The board would be consisted of 4 district judges, 4 attorneys, and 4 citizens, which would conduct disciplinary hearings and hear appeals relating to disciplinary actions from the Commission on Judicial Discipline. Under the amendment, judicial discipline cases would become public once formal proceedings begin, rather than confidential until the process is complete. Interesting. I don't know what happened to. Oh, what did I do here? That's weird. Maybe I should zoom out. I don't know what happened to the rest of this. And I'm stuck here. Here we go. Yeah, I don't know what happened to the rest of the document. Weird. Oh, well, I have to finish the rest of this Friday, but that's weird because now all of a sudden all of them don't show up and they did before. So I don't know what happened there. I'll speak to Roger about that. But that's where we are right now, ending with that judicial discipline board. And then we will finish Colorado tomorrow. I don't know what happened to the rest of the document. It's weird. It was up there like a minute ago and then it just disappeared. So anyway, that is it for me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go ahead and get the super chats here as well. Thank you, Suzanne. Famous. Oh, I saw that. Sorry, guys. Eric will be back next week. People are like, get it together, Sabs, get it together. Thank you. I'm making sure that New York Varsity. Why know what? If Viagra is covered, ? So should birth control. Be real. The blue pill is not approved strictly for the purpose of procreation. Jeez. Interesting. Thank you, GB. Sabby, did you see that video of Obama talking down on black male voters for not being enthusiastic about voting for Kamala? I have not. I'll have to search for that on the interwebs, folks. Oh, boy. Haven't seen that one, but yikes. Okay. Now I'm being Mr. Mackey. Yeah. Okay, cool. That is it for me, guys, for tonight. I hope you have a good evening. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.